one of the options available for the Broncos, if they're evaluating every potential quarterback and ways they could get them, they could call the Browns and offer something for Baker Mayfield, because the Browns have yet to extend Baker Mayfield. They've yet to give him the long-term commitment. Andrew Berry, general manager of the Browns, met with reporters yesterday. Here's some of what Berry had to say about a contract for Baker Mayfield that will expire after the 2022 season.
Are you comfortable playing Baker in 2022 without a new contract?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty comfortable. We have a lot of guys that, will have gone into their final year or something along those lines. I mean, that's not something that really goes into the calculus for us. Every year you'll have guys that are on expiring deals.
Lame duck quarterback, is it uncomfortable?
Yeah, I don't know that I would categorize it that way, Tony. I mean, again, you have a number of players across positions that are entering the final years of their deals. So that's not something that's really top of mind for me. I think the reality of it is, any of us who work in the NFL, every year's a prove it year. To the contract question in general, Dan, I think you guys probably know me well enough that I kind of march the beat of my own drum in terms of whatever contract precedents are out there. So we'll deal with each situation on an individual basis.
Here's the bottom line. It's always different with your quarterback. It's always different when your quarterback's in the final year of his contract, especially when it's a guy who was the first overall pick in the draft and a guy who is presumably your future. Where are you as it relates to your attitude and your approach toward the guy who is supposedly your future? And I feel like, Chris, what they've decided to do is roll the dice on this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's wait and see. If he bounces back, they expect him to bounce back.
Yeah.
That implies a lot. We expect him to bounce back means we think he sucked this year.
Yeah.
Right. What's he bouncing back from? We expect him to bounce back. Bounce back from what? And so he was bad. And they would rather not make the financial investment. Even right now, I think you could get him at a pretty good deal. He's headstrong. He's got a high opinion of himself. That's fine. I'm not being critical. I'm just stating facts.
Yeah.
But I think you could probably get him for less now than you would have gotten him for before this season. Even then, they don't want to get themselves into a spot where they say after a year or two, what in the F did we do? And it's funny because Andrew Berry's the one who tried to tell us all months ago that the Jared Goff and Carson Wentz contracts aren't a cautionary tale. I thought it was baloney then. It's even more baloney now because they are the cautionary tales. That's the reason they haven't done it with Baker Mayfield. And that's the reason they're not doing it now. That's the reason they're willing to wait a year. And, hey, if he ends up being Pro Bowler, first-team All-Pro, playoffs, Super Bowl, whatever, they'll pay whatever they have to pay. Good problem to have.
Exactly.
But they're not going to pay this guy and put themselves in a position where a year or two from now they are waking up every day saying, why did we do that with Baker Mayfield?
That's right. I mean, first off, Andrew Berry sounded like a guy there that he's not intimidated by this situation. He's not going to buckle. That didn't sound like that type of answer where he was like nervous, like, oh gosh, I don't know what we're going to do with the quarterback. It sounded like he's already made up his mind. Like, no, he's not getting a contract because we saw things this year that were concerning, like you talked about. I mean, bounce back means we didn't go forward enough as far as our development and what we're trying to do with the quarterback position. And it'd be one of those things too, if they did give him a long-term contract, there's enough evidence to sit there and go, man, what were we thinking doing that? What were we thinking doing that? Like, we saw this coming, and now here we are stuck with having to pay him money, and it's on our books or the salary cap and all those issues. So, okay, another year of evaluation, because, yes, you've seen some of the bad and some things where you go, I don't know about that. Even the first half of the 2020 season wasn't all that great, but also you can justify another year of evaluation and see where it goes and, a little bit like, hey, the grass isn't always greener. And because you have seen some good from the guy. You have. You saw him go into Kansas City in a playoff game and move the ball up and down the field on the Chiefs defense last year. We've talked about that. We saw little snippets this year of some good play. It's been there to at least justify, hey, we'll bring him back. There's talent. He has a big right arm. There's no doubt he's got some leadership skills. We know that too. There's some moxie and some fire about him. Like when he gets knocked out of bounds and he gets up and goes first down with a hurt shoulder. Like, you could see the team likes him and rallies around him from that standpoint, but no way do you give him a long-term deal. So, again, I don't know if this means they bring in another quarterback to compete with him a little bit, if they open it up with Case Keenum just to light a fire under his butt to a degree. But I understand them bringing him back for another year and evaluating this. You don't let him go unless something just falls in your lap, like Russell Wilson again, or a Deshaun Watson, to where then you go, okay, well, they're offering this to get him. We can do that. We'll take that. But I don't think they're just going to throw him off the ship for nothing.
And this is why it's important for the Browns to create the impression for now that they're all in with Baker Mayfield. This is why I believe they took advantage of the fact that they own 132nd of NFL Network and put out the word on Sunday of Week 18 that they plan to move forward with Baker Mayfield. If you are perceived as being desperate, anxious to trade him, to get somebody else, the price goes down for what you get for Baker Mayfield. The price goes up for whoever you replace him with. They need to have the attitude, and Shireen and I were talking about this yesterday. I mean, every time I buy a car, I work myself into a legitimate state of mind where I don't want the car, and that's when I get my best deal. The problem is, by the time they give me the best deal, I truly have decided I don't want the car, and I have to undo that, right? Because that's the only way you get the best deal, is to convince yourself that you don't want it. That convinces them you don't want it. Then they give you the best number, and you got to tell yourself all over again, okay, maybe I do want this car. And I think that's what the Browns are trying to do here. They're trying to convince themselves and everyone else that they want Baker Mayfield, because if they sell that legitimately and genuinely, somebody maybe calls and says,
no doubt,
what do you want for Baker Mayfield? And whoever makes the first call in those negotiations is always operating at a position of weakness. So I think that's what they're trying to set up. So it's not going to be easy, but I think they will consider all their options privately and quietly and discreetly, but they're not going to be desperate. They're not going to put themselves in a position where they have to overpay for a replacement and take less than what they think they should get if they would trade Baker Mayfield to someone else.
No, I think you're spot on there, and I think also what's at play there with them making this, last Sunday splash report and all that is you instill some confidence in him and your team too in him if he is back as your quarterback next year. You haven't publicly downgraded him to like, we don't know if we really want him here and he's that good. Oh, wait, he's the quarterback next year? Hey, guys, buy in. He is good. Like, so that's where you got to be careful too. Not only for if you want to have the sale or trade him, but if he is back as your quarterback, you don't want to, cut one of his legs off here as far as the ability to lead the team and be the guy too. So that I think they're playing it just right, and I think I understand it. Good. Don't buckle just because he was the number one pick, and that you got to justify the fact that he was the number one pick. The good thing is that regime that picked him is gone. So this regime can sit there and evaluate it for what it is. They're not trying to justify something they did 4 years ago. And I think that will help them too, in the fact that they don't throw money at him. And you just sit back and let this play out and see where it goes and see if Baker Mayfield can up his game this year with Kevin Stefanski. And they need to help him too, like we talked about. There needs to be a few other receivers. The offense has to grow in the passing game a little bit. There's no doubt about that too.
Chris, another reason for them to take this position, Mayfield, very sensitive, and I don't mean that as criticism. He's sensitive to what's being said and done within the organization. One of the reasons he was upset with the team this year was because the internal radio show criticized him from time to time. And hey, I got no problem with it. We all got to be on the same page here. We've got enemies everywhere. We don't need enemies within.
Yeah.
And I need to know, if I'm Baker Mayfield and I'm committing myself to this surgery to repair the torn labrum and I'm all in for this year, I need to know that you're all in with me. At a minimum, I need you to be projecting that to the world. And, the reality is they may be projecting it to him too, but as always, that's subject to change if you can thread the needle on an acceptable trade of Baker Mayfield and an acceptable trade for his replacement. But I think they know that they can't let him dangle, that he's going to get pissed.
Yeah.
And maybe he does get to the point where he takes the initiative and says, I want to be traded, because you're not doing enough to make me feel like you want me to be here. So that's another reason
No doubt.
for them to have the posture they currently have.
Yeah, I agreed. You're right. It's another issue. You're right. You don't want to upset that. It becomes, again, dysfunctional. Now he does want to get traded, like you said. Now the value's lower for that trade, whatever. They do themselves no good by making Baker Mayfield look bad in this situation in any way. It really doesn't. And again, I think they're totally justified in their stance. And I don't know how Baker Mayfield, could really throw too much of a fit to look at it and go, wait, I deserve an extension. I deserve something long term here. I think he's realistic enough to know that, yes, this is still left. There's a lot to be debated here, and that he needs to play better to solidify that next contract.
And he'd rather bet on himself than take whatever he could justify right now. He knows his value's down. I'm not going to do a deal with my value down. I'll come back and prove myself next year, and then either you or someone else is going to have to give me much more than what I would get right now. That's part of the moxie that has made him so successful.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.